Yeah, these two have taken that chant a little bit too literal, and for the better part of the past 8 years, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns have been joined at the hip. This year at Summerslam, they're set to have their 7th one-on-one match on pay-per-view, and it's got a lot of fans really tired. There are some, including myself, who are actually excited to see what these two can do in a last man standing match. I think it has potential to be a perfect car crash. But there are people out there who are just really sick and tired of this repeat cycle. Why, you might ask? Well, they're tired of seeing this match main event what seems like every pay-per-view. They've seen it 3 times at WrestleMania, and each time with a progressively worse match in retrospect. The problem that many fans have is not necessarily with Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar as people. The problem is they're not enjoying this copy-paste booking. It seems like for every big pay-per-view where there's a clear other option, WWE runs back to the well with this story. Look guys, the reality some people forget is that this match draws money. No matter how many times it happens, at the end of the day for WWE, that's the goal, to make money, to put butts into seats at SummerSlam, sell merch and all the rest. And let me remind you that there was a time where we had 2 other guys, Cena, Orton. These guys wrestled for what felt like forever, and now there's people out there clamoring for just one more match. So hey man, one thing I've learned in wrestling is to just enjoy things while you have them. Nothing lasts forever, unless, you're Ric Flair. But before we analyze the good and the bad in this rivalry up until this point, it's important to see how we got here and the arduous path between these two. Cast your mind back to 2015. The Royal Rumble of that year is where WWE strapped a rocket to Roman Reigns and they wanted to build the next generation of the company with him at the forefront. Coming out of the Shield, he was naturally cool, but they gave him a character of basically looking like Super Cena number 2. And as you'll see later on, characters can really make or break stories. He won the Royal Rumble and even got big time endorsement from The Rock, but it wasn't enough. Fans hijacked that night, and you might ask why. Well, it was too much too soon. They didn't like the direction of the character, and he himself didn't exude qualities of a guy who was ready at this point. He was athletic, he had the look, but he just didn't seem ready. Add to that Daniel Bryan, who a lot of fans wanted in the main event, was cast aside a year after he won the big one at Mania. But nonetheless, Reigns was gonna face Brock at WrestleMania 31 in the main event. Brock had captured the WWE title off John Cena at SummerSlam 2014 after his historic win against The Undertaker. The basis for this story was the young gun versus the veteran, and what didn't help their cause heading into WrestleMania is that on the go home they had a tug of war for the WWE title. Regardless, it was a fresh new matchup that we hadn't seen before. Going in, there was next to no expectation for this. It was basically like, alright, give Roman the title and move on. But they exceeded all expectations and they turned what many believed would be a dud into an all-time main event. The match, it was a knockout, drag-out fight. Brock Lesnar throwing around Roman countering with his explosiveness and power, but that main event is mostly remembered for what Michael Cole coined the heist of the century. Seth Rollins came out, cashed in his money in the bank, and it wasn't Brock, it wasn't Roman, it was Seth Rollins who walked out the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. This finish was pretty crazy considering that it looked like Roman was gonna get the win. His dad Saga even wanted him to quit the WWE because of this finish. Reigns had about 50 family members in attendance that night, and the plan was for him to win the WWE title, get his crowning moment. But midway through the show, those plans changed and it resulted in Roman's dad reportedly being ready to start a war. And a war is what this match was. The higher-ups were probably as stunned as we were as to just how well these two meshed together. And for Vince McMahon, he'd found a formula that would lead him into the next generation. Roman and Brock. But here began a problem that we've seen before, the recycle cycle, where you find a formula that works and to avoid building up a new and refreshing story, you go back to the well and you continue a feud that's exhausted all aspects of it already. In turn, not only annoying the fan base, but having a ripple down effect on the rest of the roster, and as you'll see later on in this video, it's not a good effect. A cycle that we've seen with the likes of Randy Orton and John Cena, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, more recently Sasha Banks and Charlotte, and for WWE, they just haven't been able to get out of this holding pattern. This was the catalyst for what we have today, and as much as this rivalry is ragged on, there's been points of this story that have been absolutely fantastic. Anyways, through 2015, the company cooled it with Roman Reigns, and come early 2016, Roman's push was in full swing again. The next time Brock and Roman would meet would be in the main event of Fastlane 2016, this time with Dean Ambrose in the mix as well. This was a #1 contenders match to see who'd face Triple H for the WWE title. This one was won by Roman, but he pinned Dean to do so. So Roman was going to WrestleMania 32, he ended up winning that match. Lesnar remained busy with the likes of Dean Ambrose, Randy Orton, and Goldberg through 2016 and early 2017. It was at WrestleMania 33 where Brock beat Goldberg for the Universal title. It was that same Universal title where these two would meet again, this time in a multi-man match featuring Samoa Joe and Braun Strowman. The story this time was simple. All four men were going after each other, they couldn't determine a #1 contender, so this was thrown together. And this match was a beautiful car crash. I love this match. Near falls, carnage, a huge emphasis on power throughout the match, each man having their time to shine, and again, it was Brock who came out on top, pinning Roman Reigns' shoulders to the mat. Here, Brock would basically go into retreat with Raw's top prize. Brock was filling his obligations as a part-time performer. He only had to show up a select number of dates, so the company leaned into the story for the next year's WrestleMania. Roman won the Elimination Chamber, giving him a Universal title match at WrestleMania 34, the second these two would meet in a WrestleMania main event. The story was simple. Brock never showed up and Roman was gonna fight to bring the title back to Raw. The company continued to position Roman Reigns as a conquering hero where the clear direction was for him to play the bad guy. Upon a rewatch, you can see that in 2018 he's improved a ton on the mic, but his one fatal flaw was the audience's reception towards him. There were still fans who just didn't buy him as a good guy yet. This was something that added fuel to the ongoing dislike for this rivalry. It was basically like, alright, you're giving us a copy paste of a match that we saw 2 years ago, meanwhile this guy is basically being shoved down our throats. And don't get that twisted, some people they loved Roman, but for a majority it seemed like a split. The push for him to play a bad guy was really heavy, and I tell you this because it becomes important as the story wears into present day. So they have Roman handcuffed, what's up Ricky Starks. They're really leaning into the fact that the entire roster wants Brock dethroned as champion and they respect Roman. Roman gets suspended for calling Lesnar Vince's boy, and they tried to build sympathy for Reigns by having him as the guy who, even while he was suspended, he would just show up like a badass. It kinda worked, kinda didn't, I guess it depends on how you see it. Going into WrestleMania, fans expected Roman to stand tall for a third straight Mania, having beat Triple H and Undertaker at the past two, but to our surprise, the winner was Brock Lesnar. News had came out that Lesnar was looking for a UFC return and his contract was gonna expire, but he instead re-signed. This match seemed pretty awkward at points. Also, the crowd seemed to give a very minimal reaction to big spots and there were loud boos throughout the match. It just seemed like people didn't really care. Brock won with a 6th F5, leaving Reigns bloodied and Raw without a full-time champion. Just 19 days later, a rematch would happen at the Greatest Royal Rumble, this time inside a steel cage, and the idea heading in was that if WWE were to have Roman win the title, it would be a bit calmer, I guess you could say, because the Saudi crowd would be more receptive to a Reigns title win. While in North America, he'd probably get booed out of the building. The match clocked in at 9 minutes and 15 seconds and came to an end when Reigns speared Brock through a panel of the steel cage. Reigns' feet clearly touched first, but Lesnar was awarded the win. And now there was even more confusion, frustration, and a lack of apathy for a lot of wrestling fans. A lot of them were just sick and tired of this repeat cycle. These two would meet for a third and final time in 2018, this time at Summerslam. They continued this thread of painting Brock as the guy who used his contract to never show up, having Raw revolve around Brock and Roman. Reigns continued to call out Brock, but to no avail. They also teased Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns aligning together after Brock and Paul had an on-screen falling out. The foreshadowing is honestly so crazy, but of course it was all a ruse. Paul blinding Roman to make the crowd sympathetic towards Roman. We get to Brooklyn for SummerSlam, and right as the bell is about to ring, Braun Strowman comes out and he says he's gonna cash in the Money in the Bank on the winner. The company used the prospect of a Money in the Bank cash in to keep the crowd engaged in the match and make sure that they wouldn't just boo both guys into oblivion, because they themselves knew that this would get a negative response from the crowd. You go and you watch this, Strowman's reaction is thunderous. I'm pretty sure nobody wanted either of these guys to be champion. This match, it was a fast-paced one. Reigns coming out with 3 Superman punches and 2 spears before Brock caught the third into a guillotine. And then the crowd erupts into a "you both suck" chant, so I think it's fair to say that they were just a little annoyed at seeing this for a third straight time. Roman and Brock each take out Strowman. Brock then flings the contract to the top of the ramp. This was to get Strowman out of the match, and quickly WWE ended this match right away. Roman hits a spear, 1, 2, 3, the company cuts out quickly, no cash in, but Reigns has finally done it. Unfortunately, Roman Reigns announced that he had to leave WWE for a while as his leukemia returned. These two wouldn't meet again for 3 years. Now, it's important to remember the dynamic between these two. Roman was always presented as the conquering hero for the people, while Brock was just there to cash a check and be a mercenary. But in 2020, that dynamic changed, and this story, in my opinion, became the most interesting that it had ever been. The pandemic rolls around. Brock was basically nowhere to be seen after WrestleMania 36. WWE was producing shows out of the Thunderdome, and at the end of Summerslam, Roman returned from a brief hiatus to be with his family, and the prayers of many had finally been answered. Roman Reigns was now a heel. The tribal chief was born, and he really went all in with this. Strong character work, different presentation, strong storytelling. From the mannerisms to everything in between, he became what many had been clamoring for him to become for years. But arguably the biggest game changer in this entire thing was Paul Heyman, now in Roman Reigns' corner. The same Heyman who, with the exception of a few years, had managed Brock Lesnar's entire career since 2002. Reigns became Universal Champion. He had defenses against guys like Edge, Daniel Bryan, Jey Uso, Kevin Owens. And then came the biggest one of them all, John Cena at SummerSlam 2021, where with one spear, he beat the former face of the company. He had built this amazing star aura to him. Just as he celebrates and SummerSlam is coming to an end, Brock Lesnar came calling. After over a year away, he was back with a new grizzled look, now sporting a ponytail and a different attire, but the biggest difference was motivation. You saw a more fun-loving, laid-back, no F's given Brock, and Farmer Brock was something that none of us knew we needed, but something we all loved to see. Brock Lesnar was just living his best life. He was back to get some answers, and he was back for blood. Now, just like that, a change in this story. Both guys with an undeniable aura and star presence. No whining about being Vince's boys, even though they're both Vince's boys. The suspense was all lying around where Paul Heyman's allegiance lied. This was really interesting in my opinion. Was it with Roman or was it with Brock? The past or the current? The suspense of this story took turns like Brock asking Paul, "Why didn't you tell Roman I was going to be at SummerSlam?" And then Roman kind of going, "Yo, I think Paul's a snake," to then reaffirming that Heyman was with Roman, but Brock insisted that Roman was getting played. So it was this flip-flop on the weekly of confusion, that this whole time Heyman was with Reigns, but it was only a setup until Brock returned. All signs led to Heyman and Brock trying to get one over on Roman, and all three parties involved deserve huge praise. Reigns, Heyman, and Lesnar, they executed this so well. From Heyman's expressions to Reigns' mannerisms to Brock just having fun. So when Crown Jewel came, it was a question as to who was walking out the Universal Champion and who Heyman would help. Now, the matches haven't been the best for the most part. They've delivered some underwhelming duds, but this one at Crown Jewel just had a big fight feel around it. I think it's their second best one after WrestleMania 31 up until this point. The finish came when the ref was out. Heyman threw the title into the middle of the ring and he says, "You know what to do with it." But we don't know who he's talking to. Both guys play tug of war with the title. Who says long-term booking is dead? Lesnar gets it, but as he turns, he's caught by the Usos, followed by a championship shot to the face from Roman Reigns, and Reigns gets the win and he walks out with Heyman. But this wasn't over just yet. Brock got suspended and then his suspension was later lifted, and 1 week, Reigns was gone from WWE TV, and Brock and Heyman looked like they were still in a partnership. The company played it up as Heyman two-timing Reigns, showing feelings for Brock. Anyways, later Heyman asked, was it him or was it Brock? And Heyman says that he was protecting Reigns from Brock. And to add another shocking turn to this story, Reigns fired Paul Heyman, punching him in the face. They teased a Paul Heyman retirement, and now there was more heightened drama heading into WWE Day 1. These two were set to main event for the Universal title, and it should be noted that reports emerged that at day one, WWE were looking at a finish that would justify a WrestleMania rematch between these two. Maybe involvement from Heyman or a completely screwy finish, but the match never ended up happening. Reigns tested positive for COVID-19, throwing the main event into disarray and throwing Brock into the WWE title match. Here he beat Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Bobby Lashley, and Big E to capture the WWE title.
This doesn't make sense. What the f*** are you? Bro, fucking told you, man. What is it? How is that? How does that? Bro, they keep selling this dude, bro. How does that make sense? Tell me. How does that make sense? That makes no fucking sense.
I did not see that coming. What the hell?
Now, I just praised the lead up to Crown Jewel. Here, things started to get really messy. Stories started to get sacrificed, and some fans got even more annoyed. If that report is to be believed, these two were going to fight for the Universal Championship regardless. It was supposed to be for just the Universal title at WrestleMania, but now Brock also had the WWE title. Post day one, Reigns returned, and we still hadn't gotten this match. Brock made it evident that he wanted title for title. Heyman, after getting tossed aside, went to align with Brock again. Instead, both guys went off to do their own thing at the Rumble, and it should be noted that storyline-wise, there were some hints of Heyman's allegiance still lying with Roman Reigns, even though he was with Brock. At the Rumble, things in my opinion got really muddy with this storyline. Reigns won his match against Rollins, and later in the night, there was a literal dream match for so many people. Lesnar versus Lashley, WWE title, but the match was instead used as a bridge to another Reigns versus Lesnar match. Reigns came in, he asked Heyman for the title, Heyman handed it to him, and Lashley took the title off Brock after Reigns interfered. And so quickly, Heyman was back with Roman. From a storyline standpoint, this was really rushed. Just a month and a bit ago, they did the turn, and now they accelerated things just to flip-flop back and forth. That same night, Lesnar won the Royal Rumble, and he chose to face Roman Reigns for the Universal title, but before that, at the Elimination Chamber, Brock won back the WWE title. So basically, WWE got rid of another potential WrestleMania World title feud so that these two could have a winner-take-all match. This was now blood for blood. These two for the third time would main event WrestleMania, and to put that into perspective, The Rock and Stone Cold, they've had 3 WrestleMania matches, they've only main evented 2 of those. So Brock's playing real life Here Comes the Pain to get Roman's blood, and this has now exhausted all areas of this storyline. Brock was just living his best life, he was having fun, he was one of the most entertaining parts of WWE. Come WrestleMania, they called this the biggest WrestleMania match of all time. That's not true. But when we got to this show, this match wasn't a repeat of WrestleMania 31 or even 34. It was the worst one in this trilogy. Reigns took the win in what's safe to say a really anticlimactic match. The match actually didn't feature any injuries. The report was that this is exactly how the company wanted things to go down. Regardless, Reigns won and he became a double champion. And here he basically disappeared with sporadic appearances here and there, now basically leaving WWE without a full-time world champion, and essentially holding both titles hostage. One of those appearances would be a title defense against Riddle where he retained, and Brock would return again. So here we go again. The company has now announced that Brock Lesnar will take on Roman Reigns in a last man standing match for the last time ever in the main event of SummerSlam 2022. You already know it's going to be 2050. It's going to be the main event of WrestleMania 65. They're going to have a wheelchair on a pole match, Pepto-Bismol Championship. These two men are going to do as the signature suggests and go till the end of time, and nothing else is going to happen. Nah, but jokes aside, this rivalry has its positives and it has its negatives. I like to give you guys both sides and leave it up to you to form your own opinion, so let's do that. Let's first look at the positives. The first one being the history. There's stuff to play off from the past. This is a feud that's gone on for 8 years, so framing this as their last match is a great way to put a stamp on everything. Secondly, it's a last man standing match. They haven't had a stipulation match aside from a steel cage match one-on-one, so this, in my opinion, brings a lot of intrigue, especially because, think about it, are they gonna have Brock drop 4 straight to Roman Reigns? I think and hope it's a car crash and everything in sight gets broken and they end things off with a bang. Next up is a big one, and one that a lot of people forget. This match draws the company money. Look at anything that involves these two, be it on YouTube or merchandise. It sells. I'm not a businessman, but if they're making money, they're succeeding. Who cares if this is the 50 millionth time they're giving you this match? To them, they're making money, and that's what's important to them. Think to yourself, who are the 2 biggest stars that they have at their disposal right now? And there's your answer. This is the biggest match that they can possibly put on right now. Also, I think it's been blown out of proportion that this rivalry has been bad per se. I don't think it's been bad. I do think those initial stages were a time where both guys struggled to give us something of substance. I think that those initial stages in 2015, 17, and 18, where Reigns hadn't really found his footing and Brock was basically unmotivated, drags things down a lot in retrospect, but since SummerSlam, it's been a really good rivalry. And the final positive I have for you is with the available stars, since everyone under the sun seems to be injured, this seems like a contingency plan, and I think that people gotta remember that they were thrown into this situation because Randy got injured, because Cody got injured. So think about it, this is not what was supposed to happen. The original plan was gonna be Orton versus Reigns, a match that happened all the way back at SummerSlam 2014, and if it would have happened again, that would have been really exciting and refreshing. I know a lot of us would have been all for that, and it would have been really interesting to see what Lesnar would have done if he would have appeared at all. It's insane how injuries have changed the course of everything. Realistically, they want a big time drawing match that's going to attract, and say whatever you want, but like I said, this is that match. Now that we've pulled out some positives, let's look at the other side, the negatives. One of the biggest, and I've mentioned this before, is that they've exhausted every part of this rivalry. From the whole veteran versus young guy angle, to the whole mercenary versus saving hero of the masses, to the story of where Heyman's allegiance lies, every corner has been covered by this on and off feud for the past 8+ years. And what more can you do? There's only so much you can do with a story like this, and instead of pivoting in directions like making it a multi-man match or having new stars in the fold, they continue to put themselves in a holding pattern. To add to that, you had Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. People had been wanting that match for ages, but instead you devalued that match and Lashley's title win, which leads me to the next con. And that's sacrificing others' championship reigns and storylines to put all your chips in this feud. At the 2022 Elimination Chamber, Brock Lesnar won the WWE title, and that brought us to a unification match at Mania 38. So basically a world title feud at WrestleMania with someone else in that position who could have benefited from either holding or competing for a world title was sacrificed just so you could do this match again. And if you want to build a strong foundation, you can't always go in one direction. I don't think the assessment I'm giving is an unfair one. They gotta move on from this, and here's the biggest problem the WWE has. All the respect in the world for Roman Reigns, but to build him up as the end-all be-all, WWE has sacrificed a ton of superstars and they haven't let anyone get to his level or even sniff him. It's basically Roman Reigns and everything else, and I get that, he's your top star, all the power to you, but you could find yourself in a situation like you did with Cena. When Cena was leaving, you had to strap a rocket to Roman Reigns. That's development that you could be doing now rather than hotshotting someone and having the fans potentially turn on said star like they did with Roman. Theoretically, let's say Brock was gonna wrestle Gunther this year. Let's say that would have benefited Gunther big time. Meanwhile, you call up Braun Breaker, you have him run through everyone for 2 months. Ultimately, he ends up losing via shenanigans to Reigns. You've now built intrigue for 2 new stars that will help move the company forward. That's exposure, and exposure is good, especially when you're in there with guys like Lesnar and Reigns. And if you want to form a new nucleus of talent, that's your best way to go. Let them get acquainted with the audience rather than, alright, it's 2025, we don't have Roman anymore. Who are we going to strap the rocket to, and who are they going to boo for the next 4 years? That's a problem you're going to find yourself in. They need to move on from this feud, have people slot in and out of feuds with guys like Brock and Roman. You can't go back and fix your mistakes. Soon those days are coming where you're not going to be able to call Cena or Lesnar and get them every summer to pop a rating. And that's the negatives I pull from this. They just gotta move on. They gotta build up new stars, or they just gotta let new people come into the fold. Like I said earlier, just sit back and enjoy things. This rivalry will go down as a historic one with two of WWE's biggest stars ever. And like I said, we had Cena and Orton wrestle for what felt like every day and twice on Mondays. And now some of us miss that. Just enjoy it. There have been points where these two have killed it. That post Summerslam build towards Crown Jewel in day one was really well done. I like that they made Heyman look vulnerable, but everything's come in pockets. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like I said, I'm excited for this match. As always, I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about this rivalry? Are you for it? Are you sick of it? Are you even going to be watching SummerSlam? Talk to me in the comments below. As always, do take very good care of yourself. Peace.